All right, everybody, welcome to today's Society Gal workshop. It is Aligned Content Creation with Emily Poe. We have with us today a content marketing expert coming here. Oops. I have my YouTube's open. So whether you are streaming in from YouTube stream or you're here on the Zoom call, we're so happy to have you here. And if you want to get on the Zoom call for future workshops, this is part of the Society Gal Academy where you have access to these Zoom rooms. You can ask questions, get personal mentorship from our workshop speakers on these Zoom calls. And we'll put more information in the chat and in the description. You can find it there. But we're also happy to have you on the stream and you can ask any questions in that chat as well. So Emily Poe is going to go ahead and get started. You can introduce yourself and then just get started. You can ask any questions during the presentation. Go ahead.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so excited to be here. I really have put three of my favorite topics into this one umbrella of aligned content creation. So I'm genuinely excited to talk about all of this, and I hope it brings a lot of clarity and thought-provoking things your way to make content creation a more enjoyable and easeful process. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm Emily. I am a homeschool mom of one in Texas, living the digital nomad life. We're actually in a library in New Mexico right now. And this is the life that we love to live. And I am the owner of a digital marketing agency called the Helpers Hub. And we love working with businesses who are world changers and want to make marketing an easier task. And I am a lover of encouraging people to do what lights them up. And that really is going to be the overarching topic that we talk about today, with alignment being the piece. So why alignment? Alignment is all about what works for you. So a lot of people, including myself, start out in business kind of looking at what other people are doing. And we start out in business, taking so much advice from Instagram. Even there's so much content about what you should be doing in your business on Instagram, and do this, post that, and talk to these people, don't do that. And it can be a lot of information to really digest, and we don't always ask ourselves the question of what works for us. And so this is why I like to bring the topic of alignment into content creation and really everything I talk about, because it kind of doesn't throw away all the advice that's out there, but it just says maybe it's not for you, and if it's not, what is for you? So that's really what we're going to be talking about today, of how to use topics like content strategy and brand and everything like that, but then also bring in the piece of what works for you. So before we get into some of the nitty-gritty stuff, I would love for you to consider these questions for yourself. How do you feel about content creation right now? Is it stressful? Is it overwhelming? Is it a messy process? Is it happening last minute? Do you enjoy it? How do you feel about content creation? And that could be for Instagram, TikTok, your blog, really wherever you're creating content for your business. And if I asked you what you do in your brand or your business, could you give me a comprehensive answer in under 10 seconds or at all? And could you explain your brand's visual appearance to me in 3 words? When I started my business, I think my answer to these would be very different than they are now. And that's okay. It's been a journey for me, and I know that it is for every business owner. So these are kind of the topics that we're going to be really getting into today. So with aligned content creation, there are 3 main ingredients. We've got brand clarity, content strategy, and content creation workflows. And so we're going to go into all of these, and when we bring them all together, they make content creation feel like an easeful, exciting, and a process that really works, that you actually start to see results from. Okay, so the first one we'll get into is brand clarity. So this is when you have clarity in who you serve, how you serve them, and why you serve them. And when you have clarity in your brand, it's really the root of everything that happens in your business, right? So you could think of this as the mission of your brand, really why you even exist and how you express that. And that is going to be the root of everything you do in your business. It bleeds into your offers, it bleeds into your copywriting and the tone of your copywriting. It bleeds into the look of your graphics and even which platforms you show up on. And so having clarity in that is really important. So that way, everything else that branches off of it makes sense for what you want to build and where you're going. And so when we bring in the alignment piece, if you think about this, if that root of everything you're doing in your business is out of alignment with who you are, with your values, and with what you really want to do, then all of those branches are going to feel way harder and not really be as high of quality as you could be if it was more in alignment with your passions and how you express yourself naturally and really your zone of genius. So I would love to give an example of this because it might be a little bit of a big idea. So one of my clients, who's actually one of my really good friends, her name is Christiana, and she's the owner of Christiana Marie Fit. She's a personal trainer. And we had a brand clarity session together. She was showing up on social media, doing all the things. She's willing to create the content and she's working on getting the clients, but she was feeling really overwhelmed because there was a lot of different directions she could go in. She wasn't really sure what topics to create content about. And she felt like there was a missing piece. Like she had so much value to offer, but she felt like the way she was displaying it wasn't really getting the point across. And so we sat down and we worked all of this out. And we kind of got down to, on Instagram specifically, she was showing up very much like, um, you know, really like tactical, like 10 ways to do this and 5 ways to do that, and sharing really general fitness information. And then when we talked, I asked her, like, well, what do you really care about? What are you passionate about? What is your zone of genius? She said, I'm really good at helping girls get big butts. And so we talked about that, and it felt really uncomfortable for her to express herself that way. But that was the truth of what she loves to do and what she's really good at. And so we ended up building her brand around that, using, really hot pinks. And, she loved the inspiration of the Kardashians. And so we brought in these kinds of things that felt really exciting to her. And then she had so much more clarity in what to post about and how to express herself online. And all of it became way more fun. And so this is just a simple example of why this is so important. And we'll go into some exercises for how you can find more brand clarity in your own business. So this is my favorite way to do this, vision board. And I feel like that sounds kind of like, like basic, like, oh, create a vision board. But I don't want you to just like create any vision board. I want you to be really, really, really intentional about this. I gave an example here of mine. And so I want you to lean into the words and graphics and photos and colors that you feel like are expressing yourself and that makes sense for your business. Like, what do you want people to feel, and which of your gifts and passions do you want to shine through in your brand? So this is an example of mine. And so I'll kind of just go through this. These colors are as simple as, I saw a really beautiful sunset, and I'm just like, I'm a nature nerd. And I saw this really beautiful sunset and was just so inspired by it and thought, this feels so reflective of me. And so I used that inspiration because it's something that I love and used it in my brand. And it resonates with my ideal client a lot because they want freedom, they want ideas, they want to be visible. We've got the work at home vibe here. And then I put in here as well a message that I received from a potential client. We've got a little graphic here displaying confidence and community and freedom. So these are all different words that I would use to express not only what I want to feel in my business, but what my ideal client wants to feel as well. And so doing this helped me get a lot more clarity on how I could show up online in a way that was aligned with me. So it's a super fun exercise to do.
Emily, I was going to say, I know you're going to talk about it more, but I love how simple a visual exercise can be, but how much it can draw out of us, right? Like drawing, which you're going to talk about in a minute, but like drawing vision boards, everyone talks about vision boards, but I think people underestimate the power of them.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
thanks
I
for
love to see
adding
that.
that. It's so true. People like, because they are kind of like a cliche thing, especially around the beginning of the new year, like make a vision board. But it's like, I feel like this is like a hyper focused vision board of how you like to express yourself in your business. And
Beautiful.
it can help you find the colors and the topics and things like that that you want to express. So yeah, so next steps for this exercise. Well, first of all, on a practical level, I literally just did this on Canva. Me and Canva are besties. I'm sure if you own a business, you are also friends with Canva. And so I just did like the desktop wallpaper and put it on there. But I want you to draw inspiration for your vision board by asking yourself these questions. What parts of your personality are people naturally drawn to? And what outfits do you feel the most inspired and confident in? I know that sounds kind of like a silly question when we're talking about brand and business, but this has to do with how you express yourself, right? And so if there are colors that you wear that you're like, every time I wear this color, I feel good, or people give me compliments, or something like that, then like pay attention to those and draw inspiration from that for your brand. And how do you love to express yourself? So do you love to sing? Do you love to dance? Just paying attention to these ways that you do that. And what would others say that you help them with? This is a really potent question. I would recommend literally texting your best friends and saying, hey, what do you see in me that makes me great? And they might be a little bit confused. My friends were not because they know I'm kind of a weirdo, so it was fine. Um, but this gave me so much clarity in what other people saw in me that maybe I couldn't see in myself, so that I could bring more of that into my brand and more of that into my business to feel more aligned and more fulfilled. Okay, so there's brand. So you could see like content strategy and these other pieces we're going to go into really, um, they all tie together. So like having a content strategy when you don't really know who you're serving, like all these pieces really tie into each other. So your content strategy is what puts a motor behind your content and makes it go somewhere. It also makes it organized so that you're not lost every time you create content. I'm sure everybody knows the feeling of going to create an Instagram post and just like drawing a blank immediately, right? Like, what am I supposed to be talking about? And like, oh my gosh, wait, I'm supposed to sell that offer and I haven't advertised my freebie in a month. And like, it's a lot of different pieces, right? Like content is a puzzle. And one of my coaches likes to say that your Instagram is like a tapestry and it's all weaved together of all these different pieces that make up your business. And if they're all scattered, then it feels really stressful. And when you get them together and piece them together, then you go to create content and you can just sit down and look at, okay, this is what I'm supposed to post about today to reach these goals that I have. So, um, a content strategy is going to answer these questions for you. What are your goals? Do you want to attract more followers? Do you want to nurture the followers that you already have? You may be in a launch and you want to convert those followers. And so, really paying attention to which season you're in with your business and leaning into that with the types of content you create is really helpful. And how many posts per week will you make based on your business's needs and your ability to create? It sounds like a really simple kind of question, like how many posts are you going to make per week? But when you really think about that, it gives you so much peace of mind because you know, okay, I just have to create 2 posts this week or 3 posts this week versus not having a plan, not having a strategy, and just being really lost about all of it. And you can also add in here when you're going to publish them based on your highest traffic times. So if you don't know how to do that, you can do it with, well, for Instagram, you can do it within the Instagram app in your analytics section. You can see when your audience is the most active and plan to post during that time. And you can also think about what topics will you post about that excite you and your audience. So this is where that alignment piece comes into play again. I am not ever going to tell anybody to just post what your ideal client wants to see. That is like a one-way road to being boring and burning out. And so you have to think about, what do you feel excited about? Like, which pieces of content did you love creating? And which pieces of content performed the best? And how can you kind of like bridge those together to make a strategy that feels really sustainable for you? So I want to show you an example of this. I've got to leave my slides here for a minute to do that. So it's going to be this one. I have mine built out here just right inside of Asana, which is a project management tool. And so this was mine for July. And so I have the different types of posts that I will make. And then like maybe, let's see, maybe within, I like don't know what's going to be in here when I open it. So I'm kind of nervous. But maybe what's going to be in here is, yeah, so like the topic was going to be a story that leads to the origins of the membership I was selling. And so I have kind of pieced in here the different types of content that I want to create with a topic inside based on the goals that I have based on the season of business I'm in. So that way when I go to create content, I can see all of this. You can even include in each day, like what time you're going to post it, and sorry, I'm terrible at multitasking. This is not my thing. So yeah, you can even add in there to each little box what time you're going to post it, and which day you're going to post it, and maybe some other little details in there like what the CTA will be, things like that. So that way your content is kind of pieced out already. When you go to create it, you just got to piece it together. It's a lot easier that way.
Yeah, I love that, Emily. I think when you map it out a month in advance, at least the topics or at least the general thing of what you're going to post, really helps get that momentum started of completing the post, of scheduling it, creating the content. Even if you're not didn't create a whole month of content worth, but having the actual topics laid out when you're going to post it already gets your commitment going. I think what's one of the hardest parts, I just did a poll over here and I said, what are the greatest challenges you have with content creation? And one of the biggest ones was dreading the process of doing it. And so like, I love how you created this process that kind of helps you see a whole overview of everything, and, you know, be able to understand what's going to happen next instead of going off the cuff of like, what do I feel like today? Right. Which I think we
Yeah.
talked about that in your podcast episode of balancing that feminine and masculine energy of like, I feel like doing this today compared to, okay, there needs to be some kind of plan and logic to what we're doing here and have those
Yeah.
both align. But we need like the foundation of that plan, that next step, right? So I love that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's such a great point. And I think that's a huge reason of why I am so passionate about this topic, because I am very much a feeling person, like very much. I don't know if anyone here is into astrology, but I have a lot of Cancer in my chart, and I've got an Aries Venus. Like, I'm very intense, passionate, caring, feeling human being, right? And so sometimes a super strict strategy is like that doesn't work super well for me. I don't want everything to be constructed, you know, to a T before I create it. And so, yeah, like you said, like having that masculine feminine balance of bringing this together, and yeah, let me have the bones ready, and then I can put my passion, then I can put my creativity into each post in a way that works for me, rather than relying too much on your feminine, relying too much on how you feel, and then maybe not getting the post done, and then getting into that loop that we all know of, oh, I didn't post today, and feeling guilty and stressed and all that. So I really think this is a beautiful way to bring like both of those things together. And it has taken me a lot of time to learn it. So I'm so excited to be sharing it with you guys and my clients. So here's next steps with content strategy. I want you to consider what you like to talk about in your content. Like I said earlier, what kind of formats do you enjoy? That's a really great question too. Like, do you like talking reels where you're talking to the camera? Are you more of a writer and you like to make those long, bulky carousels? Do you like to just throw up a photo and make a really decent caption? Do you like to do the B-roll reels with a caption? Like, what comes naturally to you, what works for your business, and take that into consideration when you're picking out those topics and formats and things like that. And also consider what your audience likes. So obviously we can look at our analytics to decide this. You can also look at, you know, which ones maybe people slide up on your stories and are like, oh my gosh, I relate to this so much. Like, take those those kinds of things into consideration as well. And then get organized using a calendar to map out your goals and your content topics like I showed you. There's lots of ways to do that. If you're more of a pen and paper kind of person, then you could use like a, I have like a paper calendar like this. It's like weekly. So you get something like this that's like monthly and just like map it out on pen and paper that way if that's your vibe. You just make it work for you. Use what you have. Doesn't have to be anything super fancy unless you like that too. Okay, so I think this is probably the topic that I'm like most passionate about, although it's kind of hard to pick. But after brand alignment and content strategy, this is the piece that a lot of people forget to consider is like you said, you did that poll of people don't like the process of creating content because they're really not thinking about how they can make it work for them and make it work for their life. And so this is why we talk about content creation workflows. This is the process of how are you actually getting the content created? Because it's really fun to talk about like post ideas and like, oh, I should make this kind of post. But it's like, okay, well, when are you going to do that? Like, when are you going to film the video? When are you going to sit down for an hour to create the graphics? Because it does take that long. And when are you going to schedule it out? Like, there's lots of different things to consider to make sure that those awesome post ideas you have are actually getting made. So when you create a content creation workflow, this is what creates the space in your life to have the time to create content in a way that works with your natural rhythms, your passions, and your schedules. And it gets you off the content creation hamster wheel. Because what a lot of people do is they wake up in the morning and say, oh, I need to post on Instagram today. And then they sit down to make a post and it's super stressful. And then their day becomes really hard. It takes way too long. And it's just a messy process and it doesn't make you want to keep doing it. I say that from experience. And I can give an example of what this looks like, and we'll get more into the details of it. But that same client I was talking about, my friend Christiana, we had, whenever we were working through her content creation workflows, you know, she was like, but, you know, when am I going to create this content? And I like to make the videos and da da da. And I was like, okay, well, how many posts at a time do you want to make? And when do you have time? And she said, well, you know, my kids go to their dad's every 2 weeks or every week on this certain day or something. And I'm like, would that time work for you? She's like, yeah. And then she realized if she set aside a specific time for content creation, that she could go really deep into it and actually create really good content rather than rushing to put a piece of content together on a daily basis that maybe doesn't turn out as well because she's feeling rushed and feeling stressed. So the purpose of this really is to carve out spaciousness and time for you to really work on your content and create really awesome stuff. So your content creation workflow is going to answer questions like, what day and time will you batch create content? I highly recommend batch creating content. And like Dana said, it doesn't have to be like a whole month in advance. It can be, but how far in advance do you want to create? How many pieces of content based on your content strategy is that going to be? How long does it take you? How long do you want to spend on your content? And what parts of content creation feel easier for you and which parts are harder? So some people are really good at creating graphics and they enjoy that. And so that part feels easier for them. Some people are a natural behind the camera and they could just like talk to the camera all day so easy, and that part feels natural to them. And so when you kind of think about which parts of content creation feel easiest for you, then you can focus on them and prioritize them and work them into your schedule easier. So let's get a little bit more into what this looks like. So here are the general steps involved with creating a piece of content. So we have the strategy and the ideas. So that's kind of what I showed you earlier, like the bones of a post, the bones, the outline of what you're going to be creating, and the ideas that come with that. You get that down, and then you can move into the copywriting. So I highly recommend, if you don't already do this, having a separate document, like a Google Doc, to type out all of your content and really break this down into steps to make it feel less stressful. If you are trying to come up with an idea for a reel while filming it, while writing the caption, it's gonna feel really stressful. But if you break it down into steps that feel a little bit more doable, then it's gonna feel easier. So strategy and ideas, and then go into the copywriting in a document, whether that's for the carousel, you can write a script for your reel and use the prompter on CapCut to film it, write out your caption, and then you can move into step 3 and create the graphics and film the videos for your content. And then you can edit those videos, and then you're ready to publish them. In my opinion, these two are honestly the most time consuming and the hardest, and just the bulkiest. And then the rest of the stuff is kind of just piecing everything together. But the graphics can also be hard if you don't have that brand clarity and you're not sure what colors to be using, what kind of designs. Like if you look at these little star kind of things on here and this little swirl, like what kind of details and fonts are you going to add to your content? If you don't have clarity in that, then creating graphics might feel really hard because you're just constantly have like too much to choose from. And then publishing, posting, you can decide if you're going to schedule them in advance or not. I kind of go between both for my own business. Sometimes I like to schedule it in advance, sometimes I don't, it depends. Okay, I would love to show you my workflow, an example. Let's see if this works. Okay, so again, using Asana, what this is every day, I think this is on Fridays. Yeah, on Fridays, I have this worked into my schedule on Asana where I have a content creation workflow. And this is the day where I sit down and I've carved out that time to create content. This is the time that works with my schedule. It's when I have help with my son. It's when I'm feeling creative. It's when I have the space to film my reels. And so this is just what works for me with my schedule. And then I've broken all those steps down that we saw in the slides. I've broken them down here into subtasks. And so each week I can open this up and just walk myself through this process. If I wanted to, and this is like my email for email marketing. If I wanted to make it easier, here in the description, I could add like a link to my Google Drive, a link to Canva, anything really to just kind of set myself up and make it easier so that when I do go to create content, I am like fully supported and have everything that I need to make it easy. All right, so that's content creation workflows.
And can I chime in real fast with workflows?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think, well, I have my own business, photography and videography business I own with associate shooters, contracted work. And when it comes to delegating tasks in business, when it comes to like social media, having a workflow already in place makes delegation 10 times easier when you need an admin person to come in, an operations person to come in and take over the content creation process, or at least the basics of the content creation process to create the ideas, to create the foundation based off your brand so you can go create the content. Because you can just add people into your workflow you already have and delegate the certain pieces that can be delegated. And so I think a lot of people try to delegate this process without having any foundation of their brand or any foundation of a workflow. And then it just never works out with the person they hired. And I've had that happen. I've wasted lots of money hiring somebody else with maybe they don't even have a good workflow that works for me, right? And so I love what Emily is saying is she's saying create something that works for you. She's showing you examples of what she's doing, but this whole thing is creating something that works for you and creating it first before you start delegating, before you start going into content creation, because it allows you to be very creative and it allows you to have a foundation to hand off to somebody else in the future. So you know exactly what's going on when and how a workflow works for you, not another contractor coming in and creating a process that just does not align with you, that doesn't work, it doesn't vibe, and kind of forcing you into their own process. Everybody has a different process of content creation and you have to make it work for you. So I love how you're breaking that down for everybody.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It does create a really solid foundation for when you're ready to hire somebody and when you're ready to get a little bit of help with this. Because if not, then like just I've worked with clients where it's just like throwing everything at me and I'm like, whoa, now I gotta like sort all this. And maybe that's where some of the inspiration for this came from, is because I have had to not only do this for myself, but with clients as well. Um, and just kind of learning like this is just such an underrated topic. There's so much talk about what types of content to create and post this and don't post that, but I feel like entrepreneurs aren't really being supported and like, okay, but how am I going to get that created? Like, how is this going to work for my life? Because social media is, or anything digital, is such a huge part of owning a business, whether that's email, a blog, like, social media, whatever it is, it's such a huge part. And we really do have to carve out the time and space and workflows to get it done.
Exactly, because what's the point of finding a strategy or a cool way, trendy way to do content when you can't even do it, right?
Yeah.
It's the implementation that everyone, right, in the polls that said again, the dreading of the content creation. It's because the workflow is not there, because you're doing it off
Hmm.
whim, right? And because you think that somebody else does it, it's going to work for you in that same exact way. We talked about that on your podcast.
Hmm.
And so I love that. It's very underrated because workflows doesn't sound pretty. It doesn't sound fun, but I hope you're seeing what Emily's talking about, because it can be fun and enjoyable when you set it all up. And then once it's set up, it's set up. And then you can go from
Yeah.
there. Like it's a kind of like a one setup, and then you got to optimize it from there. But at least you have it down ready to go, and your content creation, those strategies you want to try, those cool videos you want to try, you can actually do them because you have an
Mm.
implementation process. So I love that.
Yeah, 100%. And if it does feel overwhelming to you, then like just start with picking a day that you're going to consistently create content on. And you might pick that day and you might do it once and realize this day does not work for me at all. Great, then like you can pick a different day the next week. Like it really is, this is a lot of optimizing and shifting, and it shifts, it's mine has shifted as my business has shifted and as I've started other projects. Like I am a very multi-passionate person and I'm always starting new kinds of projects, and I do have to shift this, but the benefit of it, like you're saying, is all I have to do is go in and just like change the day. Like I don't have to start over from scratch. I can just adjust some things and make it work for me. And I really think that that also starts with the mindset of we get to make business work for us. Like it doesn't have to be this thing that burns us out. It doesn't have to be this thing that we like sell our soul. Like we created a business to feel joy and to feel freedom and to feel empowered. And this is such a beautiful way to just bring more of that into your business. So, I think we kind of went through this, except and kind of touched on this, but one thing that you can consider is outsourcing some of the work, some of these pieces, like in how I talked about which parts feel easier to you, which parts feel harder. After you consider that, another thing that you could consider is outsourcing those parts that feel harder to you. So maybe you're not a very strategic person and you don't really know how to make the goals that you have translate into what types of content to create. Or maybe you really hate creating graphics, but you could type for days, right? Um, Maybe you love recording reels, but you don't like editing them and you don't like posting them. Like everybody has their thing. And so just paying attention to what is your zone of genius and how you can stay in that by outsourcing some of that um, is really helpful. And so some next steps, write down these steps that you take, prioritize them from easiest to hardest. You could even group them into like different categories if you wanted to. Consider using a system like Asana to keep you on track since it is task-based. And then fill in those gaps by either your skill gaps by either learning. You could take a course on filming video. You could take a content strategy course. Like there's lots of different ways that you can learn, or you can get help so that you can just, if you're like, nope, I just know that this is not something I'm good at. I know that this is not my zone of genius, then it might be best to just get some help so that you can stay in your zone of genius. All right. And on that note, I can help you with that. So if you want help getting all of this aligned, or a social media buddy is like what I like to call it. It's one of our services, which is where we share the workload. So it's where you get to focus on your zone of genius and we get to help with the rest. And we have workflows, we have a strategy, we have all the things that you can follow. And then we just work together to actually get through that content creation process and get it done well. And so if that is something that you are interested in hearing more about, I would love to share with you how that works and what that looks like. It's one of my favorite services because it's more accessible than like offloading all of your social media. Maybe you're not ready to do that, especially if your brand is not in a very clear, solid state. Like having an expert, a professional to help you with some of the pieces can really help to solidify your brand, and kind of like get your SHIT together in a way that feels really supportive for you. Okay, and so that is all that I have to go through in my slides and teach about, and I would love to open up for questions, if anybody has any. And I'm going to stop these slides and pop over to Zoom so I can see everyone. There we go.
Okay. I love, thank you so much for doing this. And
Yeah.
everybody, Emily's information will be in like the details of this video. If you're watching the stream, you can see her website and I'll link right to her over there as well. But put any of your questions in the chat. Something I love from all this, again, is like the foundation of your content creation, but even so, something we talked about even on your podcast a while back was how you show up. And when it comes to aligned content was, you can show up for you, yourself, and your success, or you can show up for your client's success, right? And serving them. And I think there's a really big difference with how you show up in your content, right? You can show up to serve and thinking about your client, or showing up for yourself and only yourself and your own likes and your own comments. And those are all really great to consider when it comes to content creation. But I think the hyper focus on that is where a lot of us go wrong, and why we get so burnt out, because we're thinking so much about ourselves and not enough about our client. And the more we think about our client and how this piece of content is going to help them and serve them, that is when we show up way differently with higher quality content. And so if you're dreading creating content, think about how you're creating it, not only with workflows, but also like Emily talked about, your energy. What are you thinking about when you're creating content? Is this about me or is this about my client? And start being more aware of that narration in your head of who it's for, because that energy will shift everything on how you show up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I love this idea of like creating content from the heart, just from a really heart open space. Like marketing is service. You're helping people by showing them, bringing them a new awareness that they might have not had before, or educating them on something. And that is such a beautiful way to be able to share your business with somebody. So I agree, like keeping that kind of line of thinking balanced between what do I want to talk about, but also what do they want to hear, and just remembering that you're helping people by sharing content, is just always such a great awareness to have.
Love that. Rowan, do you have any questions while we're on here, or anybody else?
I was trying to find my unmute button. Yeah, so I've been just struggling on like how to make like so what I'm an at-home baker, so I'm like I've been wanting to start like a social media or a website, and I've been kind of skeptical and scared because I don't know really what and how to post the right content or what to post.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's a really common place to get stuck, especially for something like baking where it's not a specific, hang on, I'm getting mama. Okay. He said nothing, so that's great. So that's a really common place to get stuck. And I think that even showing your process of how you bake and what that process is like, you could even talk about what's going on in your mind while you're baking, that could be something really engaging. Like, I could even ask you this question right now, like, why do you bake? Why do you like baking?
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm special needs, so when I was born, my umbilical cord was wrapped around my throat, so I was oxygen deprived. So one whole side of my body is weaker and not as um, I'm not as strong. So that's so and from when I was little, my mom or my aunts or pretty much uh, uh, anyone in my family, they've always encouraged me to like bake, and so that's how I kind of wanted to.
I love that.
So
See, that's
yeah,
a beautiful story. And
yeah,
storytelling is such an amazing way
yeah,
to make content. And like, so you could, do a video of you baking something and just sharing a little bit and just sorry. And
no
just share a
problem.
little bit of that backstory of like of why you love baking and what it means to you. And it means that I get to use my body, and it means that I
Right.
get to try new things, and I've always been encouraged to do this. And like, that's really people love storytelling, that we understand it generally, where it's easy for us to grasp onto, and we love stories. Like, our brains are wired for stories. So that could be a fun approach to take. And then, of course, just sharing photos of your baked goods. Yeah, and things of that sort. Recipes could be fun too if you decide to get into that. Um, so yeah, there's lots of creative ways to get through it and come up with some awesome ideas to share.
Yeah, and I always tell Rowan when she starts her Instagram, it'd be great to see Rowan, the BTS, like the behind the scenes of Rowan making something, like your mom following you around with the video camera and getting all of Rowan creating her things. But I agree with Emily, like the storytelling about your story that you just told us and why you're doing what you're doing and how you and your mom are working together to do this in your local community. And it just really, it inspires other people too. Like the fact that you can do this, somebody else can, and they'll see that and want to do that same thing. Like if she can do it, I can do it. And it's just really breaking bounds, right? Like people want to see people do that and rise up and do their own thing in a powerful way and show up in a powerful way, no matter what their weaknesses are or whatever that happened in their life or the situation, they could still make it happen. So yeah, your story is very powerful.
Yeah. And even Rowan, you could think, like, from what Dana was saying, you could think of that, what you just told us, being like the root of your brand,
Right.
of feeling empowered to do something, even if you've been told maybe that you wouldn't be capable, or that it's challenging, but you're doing it anyways. And so like that could be the root of all of your content if you wanted it to be, if it was inspiring enough for you. Um, and so, and that could be something you talk about on your website and things of that sort as well. So yeah, you got lots to work with, girl.
Yes, I've just haven't been exactly sure how to start it or do it because
Yeah, that's the hardest part, getting started.
yes.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Emily gave a lot of great, like rewatch this in the recordings and take notes on what you can do too, because it can be really simple. I think the biggest thing, Rowan, too, is just getting all your ideas on paper, like what Emily was saying. Your ideas, like all ideas you have, that'd be great content, put it on a document or voice note it on a document. So that when you're ready, you'll have all these content ideas ready to go, the things that you think you would be great. And then follow Emily's process of the workflow and kind of setting that up. And then you and your mom can follow those things to do it together. Because your mom's a big supporter, I'm sure. And if you have that process data like Emily showed, it's going to be really easy to work together on it, on the steps. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Emily, thank you so much for being on here today. We had a
Yeah.
lot of people streaming today on YouTube, and so they're all watching you, but make sure you connect with Emily in the description. You can see her website in the description. And what do you want on Instagram? What's your handle?
Yeah, so I'm realizing right now that on my name it says Emily Poe at Content with Emily. And so I actually just changed it back to my business name today. So don't look that up because it won't be me. So I'm at the.helpers.hub. So that's where you can find me on Instagram. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I love to connect with people on there. If you had questions that maybe you can't think of right now, or you have questions later, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help people. I love answering questions and just helping however I can. So
great, Emily, it was great to have you on. Thank you.